beautiful fan news that we are here today. Moreover, we are going to have a lucky draw later on. So if you haven't put your name card into the lucky draw box, please do it now. And to stay tuned to the informations about the IPv6 certification program and the future activities about IPv6, please fill in the Internet Society Hong Kong membership form and become our member so that you can be in the loop and get all the updated information. So now let's move on to the panel discussion. May we now invite Charles, together with our guests, Eric, Jason, Martin, Kevin, and Mr. Warren Kwok, IPv6 Working Group in Internet Society Hong Kong, to come onto the stage.
We finally come to the last part of our session, which is, I think, the time for all of you to get your questions in. But before that, I think because since we first heard from Eric in the beginning and Kevin at the end, we've had quite a bit of different perspectives on the development. Well, I guess not just talking about World IPv6 Day as an event or as one day, but actually the transition strategy and all that. I guess why don't we have a round of comments from our speakers first? If you have anything that you want to react to other speakers, what they have been saying, before we maybe we try to get some questions in. And of course, Warren, after the four of them, maybe you can also give us a little bit of your reaction after you heard the four of them talking. Of course, let me introduce Warren. I don't have to introduce the other speakers because they have already spoken. Warren Kwok is a member of the working group on IPv6 of Internet Society. He also happens to be a telecom engineer at the Office of Telecommunications Authority in Hong Kong. Why don't we start with who'd like to go first, Eric or Jason? Eric? Is it on?
Yeah. Okay. Boy, I don't know. I'm still thinking about Kevin's talk. Some very interesting points, and I think that some IPv6 only content, and it's very tempting to think that a killer application of some kind for IPv6 only would in fact do the trick. But if I may offer 4 counterpoints, okay? Just something. I mean, if IPv6 only content were to work, I would be very happy. The only thing that I want is for IPv6 to be deployed. However, with respect to the killer application, first, as a content provider or someone who writes the software to enable the Google web servers and other kind of things, since 2008, when we did IPv6.google.com, I have heard, oh, that's great. You know, web, and we did web as well in 2008, and Gmail interface, and Google Docs and Calendar. And everybody said, well, that's great, but where's Maps? Where's YouTube? And in 2009, we delivered Maps. We saw a 3x increase in our traffic. And in 2010, in January, we delivered YouTube, and we saw a 12x increase in our traffic. And everybody came and said, well, where's DNS? And where's SMTP? Right? And so when I hear people say, oh, content has to do more, they have to do more, I'm a little bit disinclined to believe that that's really going to change ISPs' minds. Because in the course of these same 3 years, very little has been done on the ISP side. They keep saying that we need to do more. We need to do more. And I'm doing more. I'm actually very close to making it possible to run an IPv6 only network if you use Google services. I don't know that that's really going to be enough, though. Secondly, it would be very difficult to approach a product manager and say, you've been working on this feature, you and your team, you've been working on it for a year, you're really excited to launch it, but let's just launch it to 0.3% of the internet. That's a tough sell. Maybe I could do it. Maybe someone would be willing to do it for just a month. A month or maybe run the beta on IPv6. That's a possibility. I'd have to take that on a case by case, on a product by product basis, maybe, and see who's amenable to that. But this last point is something that I think about the killer application in general. There was internet before there was web. From 1969 to thereabouts to 1993, there was the internet. And you could send mail, and you could telnet. I was in college. I used to telnet into a cray at NASA and do numerical simulations and things like that on fluid flows. And you could also do Gopher searches, and you could do FTP and that kind of stuff. It took, 24 years of steady IPv4 deployment. Right, it had to get out there. It had to get into a lot of places. And it wasn't even really available in homes. That was in universities and in research networks. It was very, very little deployment residentially. And even then it was modem, as I'm sure we all remember. There had to be a critical mass. There had to be a sufficient deployment for experience for people to know that there was something new that they could do with this IPv4 thing that they couldn't do with other networking protocols, or that they couldn't do with their own local office-only network, because there were other networking technologies at the time too, but as we all know, IPv4 pretty much won the day. I think the same might be true of IPv6. There are a handful of people who are doing some very unique things with IPv6, but in order to do something new with IPv6, you have to have it. You have to get it to the internet garage where those innovators are working. So that they can realize, oh, if I do this IPv6 mobility thing, if I do use linked local addresses in this clever way, or use this new feature of IPv6, then I can do this new thing. And I'm not smart enough to know what that killer application is going to be, but I believe that it's out there, and I believe in order to get it out there, we have to get it into the hands of the really smart people who are going to think of that. But as I said, my goal is still, I'm sure, the same as yours. We just want to see IPv6 done.
Yeah, Kevin, you seem to want to respond to that.
Yeah.
What might that killer content be?
So I think I probably agree with you, because when you first turn on the IPv6 in the Gmail, so for whoever who are diehard of the IPv6, it definitely asks more, right? But my logical is, those people, right? You already know it's IPv6 diehard. We know from industry there is a 1% or how many percent of people, they will say you have to go IPv6 across everywhere. So can we change the thinking like this? All right. So if you make one application, just any application in the pipeline, all right. So if you can work with Cisco, for instance, all right, we make a great translator, for instance, with it's an API or whatever. Make sure when this IPv6 only application you put on the line, people don't even need to know it's IPv6 only, because the people who use IPv6 access is work for sure. People from the IPv4 side, it's also magically work. Probably not 100% because we know the problem, right? But my point is that's a little bit move the needle, right? Because you suddenly the people will say, "Oh, where it's work? It didn't just your new application not just applicable to the 1% of the IPv6 diehard. It's 90% people almost can use that. Not as perfect as the IPv6 only user. So if we can do something like that, I think you will have a user say, "Hey, PCCW, I need to have IPv6 access servers. I'm your customer. If you give me, I go back." Just one application. Because for me personally, I don't believe we're going to have a killer application for my IPv6. I just don't believe. People talking about the Internet of Things, all those things. I believe interconnect between the v4 and v6 is a killer function, because no matter how great, Google right, it's a great application probably, but compared to existing IPv4 success, it's still relatively small. So that's why translator in Hong Kong, people have this capability. It's not a lot of people, not everybody have it, but those people, working with a content provider, they together, probably move the needle. That's my point.
Well, Jason or Martin or Warren, do you want to jump in with any of your comments on this? Or Jason, you seem to be frowning.
You mentioned that maybe some killer content should be IPv6 only, but you also mentioned NAT46 should be able to reach it. I'm a little unsure which one you would prefer. If it's reachable through NAT46 or similar, then by definition it's not IPv6 only. What? Further, I don't think you're going to see any serious content provider go IPv6 only until there is that critical mass, until they're at a point where v4 only is noise. Our job is to deliver engaging content to the users. We're accountable to our shareholders and to our advertisers. We're not going to cut that off. I think that when the day comes where it is noise, due to our competitive, collaborative nature, we might pick a day to do that, but I don't see it being in the next 5 years.
You mean like a World IPv6 only day?
V6 only day coming
V6 only
to a theater near you.
Or IPv6 Saturday every week, once every week.
See, I could approve of that, but I don't own content and I don't own eyeballs. I'm just in the middle, so it doesn't affect me as much. I'm very well set for if it's v6 only, but I'm very well set if it's v4 only. So it's interesting that in the middle this is less of a conversation. But it's an interesting point because I want to compare that to something else. I was quoted as saying, I've said a lot of things actually, but the comment I made is that when you look at v6, you want to ask yourself a simple question. If you're running a business, you want to ask a simple question: do you still want to be in business in 2 or 3 years' time? And does that then make or control whether you take v6 seriously or not? You want to ignore v6? Okay, go ahead. But will you still be in business? Will the rest of the world simply move around you? Now, the reality is, I think I said that comment originally 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm actually, to be honest, I have to say that there are quite a few companies that have started to look at v6. Their timeline may not be as aggressive as the collective people sitting here, but at least they now know how to spell IPv6. Whereas you can honestly you can document from, maybe even 2-3 years ago, people, large companies who just simply wanted to ignore this. So there is a dramatic change, but we're, what did you say? The sort of the 1%. We are that 1%. Yes, absolutely. We're a lot more critical and needy than others, and pushy than others. So yes, I mean, there's good stuff happening out there. Just we're sitting here saying not enough.
Warren?
Yes, I think we have seen examples of IPv6 only content, say ipv6.google.com. So Google may check the percentage of user. If you can promote that domain quite well and people using v6, they're willing to type the URL ipv6.google.com. So it's a matter of publicity, how you bring the message to the end user.
So your point is to grow that 1% slowly and gradually, because those people using that IPv6.google whatever service are those 1% of people or less. So your point is still to believe in the growth of that gradually. Warren or anybody else would like to?
Well, with respect to IPv6.google.com specifically, that was launched as a test domain. That was what we could get working in March 12th of 2008. For general purposes, we don't really want to have anybody have to type IPv6.google.com. The average user doesn't really care what protocol they use to get their content. They just need to get their answer. They need to get their maps. They need to get their Google Plus updates and so on. I don't think we could do anything to specifically promote that, but obviously still looking for something to help promote IPv6 more.
Well, there's an interesting measurement that was presented. I only saw this about 2-3 weeks ago, and I really do need to get hold of the graph. The slides will, I think, show up publicly within the next week or so. The Defense Research Education, DREN, the network that is the public side of parts of the US government and the like. Ron Brosma, who I think the name has been mentioned already today, has pushed for an enormous amount of v6 capability in that network, to the desktop connectivity, to the printers, to every single element inside the network. They have a very strict purchasing. They're far, far ahead of many other networks out there. They run their vendors through a lot of testing to make sure that they consider v4 and v6 to be on par and equal. And they bias a lot of their internal services towards v6, which is actually, from an RSC point of view, quite easy to do. Their graph today was the same graph as it always is. But when you took that graph and looked at the percentage graph, the percentage of v6 versus v4 on the network, which is higher than most other, for a large number of users spread out, in this case, throughout the US and actually a few more places as well. They peaked at one point at 68% of their traffic being v6. It's an amazing peak. And it just happened for a very short period of time. But it happened. And then you have to pull that apart and say, why did that happen? And it actually happens for some very interesting reasons, and there may be pluses and minuses to this. The reality is that the majority of traffic that is seen on the global internet is representative from a very few number of sources. Google, YouTube as part of Google, the Maps as part of Google, Yahoo and all of its properties, Facebook, which went v6 for that day, all these myriad of other sites, but a couple of CDNs that also, on behalf of their customer base, turned on v6 for that day. So you get a measure on World v6 Day of what could happen if the end user has a really well configured and active v6 network. Remember, it takes eyeballs and content together in order to make traffic flow. So on his network, and this graph is quite amazing, and I want to see the whole presentation and really pull it apart again, is that there's this potential that you could see a very large amount of v6 traffic. Now, at the backbone level, is this, we'd be very happy to see that. But what's more interesting, it shows the potential, and I think that it's a very special case. It's a case well ahead of other networks. But let's take it for what it is.
Right.
It says that there is a finite number of sites that that could go and generate go and provide their content with Quad A's, could provide their content with v6, and that those sites, if you have a well-connected eyeball network, whether in the enterprise or in the broadband space, you actually get to these high numbers. These numbers, the percentages, 4.3, was it 4.3 or 4.6% was your?
Or
4.
for what?
For the total amount of v6 for a particular country. It was France, right?
Oh, France is almost 4%.
Almost 4%. So we're in single-digit percentages, but there's the potential out there of having, 10, 20, 30, but the 68% was amazingly high, and it peaked only for a short period of time.
Okay.
So there's potential out there.
Okay, so maybe we should open up for some questions from the floor. I have to designate the first hitter to be Chihu, the leader or the head of our working group on IPv6. Chihu, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm being penalized because I'm not sitting on the panel.
On the panel.
Anyway, when you speak to different people, different IPv6 experts, they may give you different advices on how to migrate to IPv6. And let's say, especially vendors, they all have different approaches. It seems that this is one of the biggest obstacle for IPv6 migration because people are confused about how to do IPv6. Do you agree with me?
I agree that it's an unprecedented task. Right, IPv4 happened as a sort of a very organic process. It was something that you brought in, and then you attached computers, and it just sort of worked. And then you attached printers, and then you attached phones, and then you attached refrigerators, and all sort of things just sort of worked. The process of going through every single thing that either touches an IP address or records an IP address, logs it, writes it, reads it, passes it on to another system. It's a very large and very daunting task. It's very easy to be overwhelmed by that. I would say one thing that I put in my slides somewhere that I sort of skipped through was in talking with some people, I have found it helpful to do the thought exercise of what if everything that you currently offer over IPv4 were available over IPv6, just pretend you had already done that. What would you need to do to your monitoring infrastructure to make sure you could monitor IPv6 the same you could monitor as IPv4? And then you begin to think, well, I need to have IPv6 on this network. I need to have it on these routers. I need to have some monitoring software that's capable. Because for most people who run production services of some kind, you have monitoring, right? You have monitoring for your service, you have monitoring for your network, you have monitoring for your users, your peering routers, and so on and so forth. All those things need to be monitored in v6 as well. And it kind of can give a place to sort of focus, to sort of begin. The other thing and the approach that we took that I discussed was as daunting as it is, you just have to begin. We began from the outside in. Right. First, we had to get some IPv6 connectivity, and we had to make sure that where that connectivity terminated was IPv6 capable. And then we had to follow the packet in to the next layer, to the load balancer, and so on and so forth. But I do understand the enormity of the task. I don't know if that answers your question.
Just a bit of a comment on that. It is a ginormous task. Don't boil the ocean. Start at one end. Start at monitoring. Good place as any. But start somewhere and work your way through it. Don't let the fact that there is so much to it across your entire enterprise, your entire company, be a factor. Otherwise, you'll never be able to actually get started.
It's really interesting. I heard the question completely differently. I think it's okay for whether you take it as equipment providers or anybody to offer and present different solutions to this sort of high-end question of how to do v6, how to move the internet forward, how to keep the internet operating. The analogy is going out and buying a car. There's a whole bunch of manufacturers that only build front-wheel drive cars. There's a whole bunch of manufacturers that only build rear-wheel drive cars. There's manufacturers that build four-wheel drive cars. A couple of weird English companies that build three-wheeled cars, but it's not important. As people prefer to ride motorcycles. You really can't, as a whole, say it's a bad thing that people are offering different solutions. It is more an issue as to, are you confusing the message towards somebody who is walking in the door the first time and says, what is this V6 thing? Or maybe the analogy is, I'd like to buy a vehicle so I can go to work. The details are probably very important, but the first thing to do is to make sure that the need is well addressed and that it is clear that it is important that we are all collectively sitting with an internet, especially in Asia, where IP addressing in the V4 space has run out. It hasn't quite hit the end user yet, but who it will. And V6 is the only answer out there. And that part, you know, you didn't see that part in presentations, but that should be fundamental. After that, it's a choice. Do I want to go with a vendor with a blue box, vendor with a green box, vendor with a yellow box, black box, white box, whatever? The end user makes that decision, and it's perfectly okay to pitch whatever solution you want. But in this particular case, the frustration that I know that you I think, base the question on is, but you've got to say the first part. This V6 thing is fundamental and important, and you cannot ignore it.
Okay, let's see if we got any questions. First one, I see gentleman over there. If anyone else has, okay, raise your hand. Okay, that gentleman first, and then we'll come to the gentleman in the front.
Hello, I am Haley from OGCIO. First of all, thank you for the great presentations. And the problem of sharing IP address or NAT has been mentioned in the presentations. Some companies have been using proxy servers, not only because to share IP address, but also for security reasons. My question is what's the role of proxy servers in the world of IPv6? Is proxy server still necessary in IPv6 world? What are your views? Thank you.
Well, it's a good question, but it's got to be understood where the usage is. So, does it make any difference in V4 or V6 if you have, let's say, an enterprise, a corporation that protects its users through the use of a proxy server? No, there's nothing about V4 or V6 that changes that. If you're talking about it at a service provider level, again, on a per service provider basis, they may consider they want to continue that practice or not. There are other reasons. There are other reasons that fit into this, but it doesn't really affect it from a protocol point of view. Where it could affect the use of NAT or carrier grade NAT is whether there is simply a lack of addresses in a particular IP family, V4 or V6. It's obvious that V4 will hit exhaustion, and it's pretty clear to say that V6 will not. So, therefore, there are practices that were used in V4 or are to be used in V4 that may not be or will not be used in V6. The follow-on question is, what quality of connectivity do you want? And it has always been proven that end-to-end connection versus a connection that goes through NAT or through a proxy, end-to-end connection will provide a better connection. And therefore, you are going to see in the future, or maybe even the near future, where v6 performance is going to be the type of performance that you've been used to today, and that the use of in v4 of more and more NAT, more carrier-grade NAT, or large-scale NAT as it is called, or the introduction of proxies, if that's the methodology to go forward, will give you a detrimental performance. It's that simple. No toll road. I mean, no toll booth to slow down at would be the easy way of looking at it.
Eric, you seem to want to say something, and maybe Jason?
I would just say that it depends on the reason the proxy was put in the first place. If the proxy was put in purely because of IP address sharing, or not wanting to overload the net with all the outbound sessions, or some IP access control list where you get special access to research papers if you come through your proxy IP, then you may find it beneficial to also use a proxy in IPv6 for the for IP access, but not for overloading a NAT or anything like that. If you use a proxy for its caching effects because you're concerned about your bandwidth bill, you may still want a proxy for that. But otherwise, no. Life without a proxy is very much better.
Okay. This gentleman here.
Thank you for the presentation today. I have done some statistics beforehand. In Asia, like Korea, South Korea, they have allocated from APNet about 73 million IP4 addresses. In Hong Kong, it's around 8 million IP addresses for IPv4. In South Korea, that means about 50% more than populations. In Hong Kong, it's almost 1-to-1. So in this developed country, like this metro city, they do not have the need to migrate to IPv6 so fast because they don't have the problem. The problem is those underdeveloped countries, like South Korea, how many addresses they have? I tell you, only 4 class C. They mean 1,000 IP addresses.
In North Korea?
North Korea, only 1,000 IPv4 addresses. So those are the countries most likely to have problem later on. Yes, and this is the problem I see because also the APNet registration fee for the IPv4 is more expensive than IPv6. If I'm not wrong, okay? I'll ask Jeff Wilson. Yeah, right. So I will see the IPv6 only, the kind of whole network, the network to be whole IPv6, likely to be underdeveloped country. And I'm not sure this is how going to happen. I just want to see whether you look at this. Is it the same way?
Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, I actually exactly running those kind of the challenging. Obviously, China facing the same problem, right? So if you're talking to all the service provider in China, even they deserve some IP address for v4, in a couple of years they're running out of address. So that's the issue. So I think we also follow Martin's, message. Always go there, say IPv6 is the future. But in end of the day, probably answer his question also. It's not only, vendor have a different approach. Probably, the different approach probably come from the technical side most of the time. Because inside of even Cisco, we debate all the time. And so it's not easy task, as Eric said, it's a system engineer. So the people just were stubborn. They like the one idea. But my experience with our customer, right? In end of the day, their business matter, right? So I give you an example. So all service provider, they feeling this pain right now, but their internal debate, all this thing have a different proposal. In the end of the day, their CEO make decision, right? Say, I go net to net. Because they calculate that. Because architecture point of view, operation point of view, that's reduce a lot of the risk. So they know they're gonna have a problem. You guys, all the problems say, but since all the content provider, not like a Google, like a Yahoo, they don't feel pain right now because they don't face in the address assignment. So that's why I said, even we pitch IPv6 in the direction, but the guy make a business decision, they need to do the calculation. In the end of the day, that's make a lot of the factor, right? So, but I agree. Probably 5 years later, so many land cascade. All the content provider are going to feel pain. That time probably the better time. Say, let's do the, my proposal. So let's have a IPv6 only content. Then my opponent at that time, probably technology also offered that option. Basically say, even you are in legacy IPv4, doesn't matter. You still can use that servers. So that's the whole point. So give you an example. IPv6, we have a lot of testing, multiple city participate, but IPv6 day, none of the bigger service providers in China participate. Why? Because they think it's too big, right?
Or maybe they're waiting for some official direction.
Yeah. Well, actually, from a government point of view, they already push, right? They have the sort of the government investment. I would doubt it's a government factor there. It's just the business, right? The guy, I agree with you. It's pretty confused for the business people, right? There's so many technology there, right? There is internal debate. They propose different. Then end up saying, hey, which one is cheaper? That's the decision making.
Can I hit the stats part of this? And I'm going to very much ignore the cost issue that you brought up because I'm not the right person to discuss that. But if you look on a country-by-country basis, there is in fact actually disparity all over the place on the amount of IP address space compared to population or compared to population online. If you go to Africa, you see enormous disparity. The example you gave is actually, I think, quite extreme, but correct, and there's no doubt about it. But let me take you on a quick journey. Let's assume that you're in a country with a lot of IP space, and you've decided, based on population and broadband density, you're okay. You've got enough IP space. You could be in Sweden, which has a lot of IP space. You could be in the US, and embarrassingly, hasn't far too much IP space. But just pick an easy one. South Korea, Hong Kong, you can use the examples that you've used. And we move forward 3 to 4 years from now. And you've proven that you have plenty of IP space. And in fact, you haven't really taken v6 seriously. You're a broadband provider. You're fine. 3 to 4 years' time, you're fine. The trouble is that 3 to 4 years' time, there's some university student who's just dropped out of college somewhere. It may not be Harvard. It may not be all those stories that we've seen on, read about or even seen on movies these days. Dropped out of college, and they've come up with that new Baidu, that new Renren, that new Facebook, that new Google or Yahoo.
New Yahoo.
Right? I mean, it could happen, right? It could happen. When was the last time you heard the word Alta Vista? It was a cheap shot, but it was so easy to do.
Well, I worked there.
Yeah, well, okay. So just hold off on that one for a second. There will be another Twitter. There will be another something. We are sitting here and we don't know what it is. And in 3 to 4 years' time, that somewhat impoverished dropout grad student or even undergraduate student, or heaven forbid a high school student, my kids are listening, do not, no, okay. Although I need a retirement, so maybe, yeah, do it. The point is, they're going to go out and with their dad's credit card, really bad example here.
They need a lot of addresses. Yeah. Okay, I come to that point.
Come to the point here is they're going to walk into a data center somewhere and they're going to have their pile of servers and they're going to bolt them in the rack and they're going to get their Ethernet or fiber cable from their provider and they're going to say, I'm ready for my IP addresses. And all they're going to get is v6 addresses. And this is the hottest new thing since anything. And we're all going to use it. Don't be mistaken. We're all going to use it. But you go back and look at that broadband provider that said, I got plenty of IPs. I know what my population is. they are going to lose out because that service is only going to be in v6. And this has really, even before you discuss translation, we go back to that point of wanting it to work better. Now, the funny part is that the mobile networks may actually have one up on the broadband providers, because it's quite possible that that is where v6 deployment to the end user is going to be easier, especially in the LTE environment. But that's a whole other conversation. The thing is that this is going to happen in 3 to 4 years' time. It takes two to tango, it takes eyeballs and content, and so ignoring v6 on either one of those is going to be a mistake.
Well, we do have an LTE provider supporting IPv6 right upstairs, so I don't know if they have anybody down here at the moment. But Warren, do you have anything you might want to add? I mean, talking about the disparity between countries and IP addresses, and you work in your role as the regulator with many of these countries. What's your view?
Well, it seems to me that if a country has 1 million people, then 1 million IPv4 address will be sufficient. That is not the case. People have mobile device. They need to use, they have a smartphone, and they have multiple PC at home. So at home you can use NET. This does not affect you. But consider mobile network, NET. That will cause a lot of trouble, especially when accessing Google Map. So can I mention Google Map?
Let me rephrase what I'm asking. Actually, I'm talking about. I'm talking final. Actually, I agree with you. IPv6 is final, right? But the point is, in the transition phase, most likely to be successful for IPv6 only places is those underdeveloped country. It's not those already developed country, because this is already developed. You only have successful cases in greenfield. That's what I'm saying. That's only my point.
Okay,
I understand.
right. Eric, or I thought you.
Well, so with respect to address depletion, Martin is right, and Warren is right. Mobile carriers are sort of already in the same space, right? And in the U.S., we have some mobile carriers who have IPv6 only devices, and they semi-successfully deploy NAT6.4 for them to get to v4 only content, and our job is to serve them v6 native so that they don't have to go through those NAT6.4 boxes. I think that's actually a perfectly fine deployment if you have no other choice, and if that's what you really want. It can be made to work. I think it's worth looking at. And the response from us is that we'll serve you over v6, so don't worry about our traffic. Worry about some other application that needs special attention from v4. We can do that. We can meet that need, and we should.
Well, I'm also interested to follow on with this gentleman's your point and your logic. If that's the case, where does China fit? Because China, on the one hand, is a country that's probably falls into your description of having much lesser IPv4 addresses than they need for the population that they have right now. But on the other hand, it doesn't seem to be such a backward in terms of internet deployment, because it's actually the country with the biggest population. Now, where would these circumstances about the transition and all that put China compared to other developed countries in terms of the internet in the internet sense? Kevin, you closest to that scene. What do you think? And I think maybe with that view on China, which I think people here in Hong Kong are very interested in, we probably would be able to close out our panel part, because you smell the coffee. And many of you probably would like to have a little bit of refreshment. So I'll give Kevin maybe the last round, starting at the last round. If anybody has any burning final remarks to make, Kevin.
Yeah, we definitely see the wave of the interest into the IPv6. Even the service provider, they put a lot of effort to do the trial network in a particular city. But at the same time, they probably have to use like a NAT to solve their urgent problem. I believe from a government point of view, there is one issue. Actually, if you listen carefully, the IPv6 is not mandatory because they don't have the Google block. So that's partly from the government. So that's why the government a little bit hesitate. So the security becomes the reason we need to hold up a little bit. And but I more look at the business side. So I agree. So the new application, so they should be in the IPv6 only, like the Internet of Things. So when each time when we pitch the smart, city or smart community, that got to be IPv6. So that's why I'm very interested in push the content provider. Even in China, right? If they only spend a little bit effort for one application, which is IPv6 enable, I think it's going to help a lot, just like a Google Yahoo did for the whole world.
So you need some content or service
That's right.
provider in China doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that's leadership. I think through this IPv6 day or IPv6 week, I think going to wake up. Google is number 2 or something. So if they take a leadership role, they will give a much clearer direction for the whole industry.
But it probably would have to be a domestic Chinese
that's right, because,
player.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's why we probably need to spend a lot of time to advise the government and for industry. I think you guys also serve as a consultant position. That's probably the pitch we should strive a lot of effort. Say, for all new application, let's try this. Then let's try to, from a technology side, solve the problem for interconnection. We don't want to isolate the IPv6 island.
Thank you, Kevin. Any final remarks from the rest of our speakers? And Warren?
I'd actually just like to ask a question of the audience, if I may. How many of you are responsible for either internet service providers or enterprise access providers to employees? Just a few.
There might be more, but you might need to define what you mean a little bit better. I don't think they got it.
How many of you provide internet service to users?
Right. Either as an internet service provider or within your own company.
How many
there's more.
of those of you, how many of you would have an easier time justifying to your management IPv6 if, say, half of the bandwidth used were available over IPv6 instead of IPv4? Where would IPv6 content actually help make your business case? So IPv4 and NAT is actually preferred? It's depressing.
I think they need to contemplate your question a little bit longer. Oh, this. Yes.
I totally feel that this is prefer more reliable or something that they experienced before, rather than trying something new. So just going back to the previous discussions about the IPv6, underdeveloped countries and also the limited numbers of the IPv4. I have a feeling it's the lateral trend would be the business would want to stay with the IPv4 for longer by commoditizing these IP addresses and buying them from the retailers. I mean, the retail users. Turns out that the pioneers on an IPv6 user would be the consumers rather than the business users. So, if you ask me as an administrator, would I convince my management to go for taking the risk to take on to IPv4? The IPv6 that is unproven. I guess is very unlikely as a business decisions if my company is not an IT company. It's just a company that relying on the telecommunications to do my business.
That actually was a point that I was discussing with Eric before the start, that possibly the retail customers are going to be the innovators in this particular transition, whereas ISPs typically think of providing IPv6 services for the businesses before they think about providing it to the consumers. But in terms of the user demand or the interest, that might be the reverse situation. That seemed to be what Eric was telling me before the start of this conference, and now that you mentioned it, there seem to be more people than just Eric thinking about this sort of this thinking along this direction, which is very interesting, and I think this is actually also something that should be further explored.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to add one more thing. Is like, in my opinion, it's actually going to a wrong path to focus on the business side. As well, it's necessary to have the business to be ready for IPv6, but like they will be the last mover because they don't want to take the risk. But as Warren mentioned it, like maybe mobile phone would be one of the first mover. Like as nowadays, most of my mobile phone is not doing the point-to-point communications, which is lacking on the level of services. Maybe IPv6 would provide a better opportunity for these driving force for the consumers to take onto IPv6. Then the content provider can continue providing better content to the IPv6 users. That would be a driving force to differentiate IPv6 from the old technology.
Martin.
Well, you asked for a summary, and I can take advantage of what you just mentioned to hit mine. The quick 10 seconds on the mobile phones is that if the mobile providers actually look at it, they actually realize there's a win for them to go V6. There's in fact actually a requirement for them to go V6. So that part may be well handled just by the fact that we're buying so many smartphones globally. But I'm going to go back and talk about the consumer. Go walk into the electronics shops. Go walk into where you buy your consumer electronics, your next wireless router for home or whatever. You know, I come to Hong Kong and I go to Mong Kok and Shim Shei Po and I go spend money. I love that area. And the question is, when you go to somebody and say, is that V6 ready?
What?
Yes, the answer is going to be what? But if you keep doing it and people have a reason to ask that, I don't know why I want it, but I want it to be V6 ready. Then potentially the message goes through. Now that's a long shot. There's much more complexity to that, but the reality is that hounding Cisco and Linksys and saying you need to be, have V6 on the wireless gateways, on the home equipment, doing the same for all the other manufacturers out there. It's been hard, but we're slowly starting to see that result. If you have a service provider, your home has got fiber to the home, or maybe you only have DSL, or you have cable. And I won't name any of the providers here, but we all know them. Pick up the phone and say, I want V6. It will have an effect if enough people do it.
Well, we'll do our next event in Shim Shei Po then.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I'll see you there. I'm sure we'll run into you there. Jason, anything to follow up on your questions? Or Eric and Warren, anything to wrap up with today?
There's no need to worry about IPv6 only network connecting back to V4. The technologies are there. They are well proven, scale quite well. No need to worry about security, no insecurity. So this is my assurance.
Okay. Okay. We'll have one last question, very quick, since you got the mic.
Actually, I got the mic a long while. First of all, among those speakers, I am very surprised for what Kelvin idea is one IPv6 contents idea. Okay, and the point is which I think to implement this great idea, there are some critical parts must be fulfilled before, because in case to implement a IPv4 to IPv6, okay, continent, okay, the major part is whether the ISP is supported. Because I did a IPv6 project
in the year 2005 in the Open University of Hong Kong, which is part of my graduate project. Okay, I did implement a IPv6 to 4, okay, to access the IPv6 internet. Okay, however, since in the year 2005, okay, in Hong Kong, there are no ISP which provide the IPv6 solution. Okay, that for my project, I must use the IPv4 to 6 to access the IPv6 internet. However, because I am using the VLAC6 backbone, and my IPv6 workstation must from Hong Kong go through the Europe and run back to my lab in the Open University. And the response time, of course, is very slow, and which is very unsuccessful. So the point is, for your great idea for only all the content, okay, go with IPv6, okay, and ISP must support your idea. However, I do not see any reason the ISP will support your idea without any business justification, right? So, and however, in Hong Kong, I see, for example, the digital broadcasting, TV, okay? And actually, digital TV broadcasting is another new standard, okay? And however, because the Hong Kong government pushed this idea, okay? And TVB and all the TVB television content provider, okay, they are forced to use the new technology to broadcast for digital broadcasting. Okay, actually, this is very similar to your idea, right? Is if all the content provider they were forced to go to the new technology, right? And then your great idea will be someday can be implemented. However, and the question is, for example,
question.
Yeah. Okay. The last one. And can we go for higher level? Is to request the government, okay, and to jump to IPv6 directly. For example, give a deadline. For example, 10 years ago, okay, and there will be no more IPv4 address allowed for the service.
Okay.
Then your idea will be successful.
Okay. If anyone wants to give a very quick response to that, very short.
So, thank you.
Just go ahead.
Thank you for sharing your experience. We definitely can talk offline for more. Basically, I agree with you. Technology is not available 2 years ago, but there is some new technology.
And the idea have a deadline, I think Eric also mentioned.
I think that definitely there is a proposal, so I don't know how successful. We can talk offline more.
Warren?
IPv4 and IPv6 are different technology. It is difficult for the government to mandate the industry to adopt a particular technology. The government always adopt a technology neutral approach. So that's why we have a lot of mobile networks in Hong Kong, mobile standard. Okay.
Okay. Eric, you have anything?
I think for the Beijing Olympics, they had all of the TV multicast occur over IPv6, which was terrific. But I'll just say that from our perspective, whether the users got V4, V6, or V4 only or V6 only, we'll serve them as best we can over both.
Well, the only final remark or comments that I make to this gentleman's very good question is that the internet has been an open environment, and it was never owned by the government. It wasn't governed by the government. The governance of the internet is run by organizations, grassroots organizations, including organizations just like ISOC. So governments do not get a role to tell internet companies what to do. So that is part of the success of the internet. Do we want to change that? That is a big question that we would probably have to leave for future discussion. But anyway, thank you very much to all our panelists and audience for staying all through. And you'll be rewarded with coffee and snacks. But before that, I think we will have I'll turn the time over to our MC for the lucky draw, maybe.
Thank you, everyone, and please proceed down the stage. Thank you. But Kevin, would you please state for the lucky draw of the Cisco Dual 1 VPN router? Yeah. Could we have the lucky draw box, please?
CCW, Danny, WK, TSE, what?
Daniel Jie.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Kevin, and also congratulations to the winner. Finally, here comes to the end of the conference today, and we would like to thank you all the supporting parties as well as the guests and other participants, which makes this conference so successful. And a networking reception will be held with refreshment provided. Besides, please be reminded that the coaches back to Admiralty will depart at 5:45, 6 o'clock, as well as 6:15. And the place would be where you got off the bus earlier. So thank you once again for all your support and participation in After World IPv6 Day What's Next conference. See you next time. Goodbye.